What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. Welcome to my channel and welcome to my March Madness 2024 predictions. I upload one college basketball video a year. I love watching college basketball. Sadly, my team in Ohio State did not make it to the national tournament. Good run in the Big Ten tournament. I'll be cheering them on in the NIT. But we have an absolutely loaded field in the NCAA tournament. And I'll talk about how I thought the bracket looked out, how some of the seedings panned out, as well as give you my official bracket predictions for what I do believe is going to happen in the NCAA tournament this year. Now, before we dive into that, I do have to answer one important question for a lot of returning viewers. Nate, where have you been? Well, to be honest, I've been really busy, not only preparing content for you guys, but also just schooling has started to catch up with me. I'm trying to plan out some stuff for internships I am taking this summer and everything like that. So I appreciate your guys' patience with this. I promise the college football content is coming back very soon. Hopefully tomorrow I will get out my spring top 25. If not, you'll see it Thursday. And I'm also going to be doing some content on the UFL, the XFL USFL merger league that is going to be taking place this spring. Maybe 1, 2, possibly 3 videos a week for that. So anything you're looking forward to, whether it's my thoughts on this college football off season, whether it is the UFL content or anything else that may come out here on my channel, hit the subscribe button, ring the bell, do anything you can to help support the channel. You guys have already seen this channel grow to amazing lengths. Continue to see it grow if you are a new viewer. And hey, a football fan like myself, again, I am a big college basketball guy. I do watch a lot of college basketball, and while it's not the primary focus of the channel, I always love filling out my March Madness brackets and giving my thoughts out there to you guys. I don't believe I uploaded a video like this last year, so let's go ahead and dive right on into it. Now, before we dive on into my predictions, I do gotta say, there are a couple things with the committee here that I feel like are just not necessarily great. And I'll probably explain more of that as I go along, but I felt like a lot of the seedings here did a lot of these teams either too much of a service or too much of a disservice. You'll take a look at where New Mexico is on the seed line. They got an 11 seed after winning their conference. That's a really good team. In fact, the Mountain West as a whole kind of just got pushed to the back burner and got a lot lower seeds than what I thought they should have been given. And there are also a lot of teams that I felt like were overseeded. One example here that we're going to touch on just a little bit are the FAU Owls. Yes, they have some good wins, including a win over the Arizona Wildcats. They do have some bad loss in playing in not necessarily a great conference in the American Athletic. Now, it's not a bad conference by any means. A lot of good teams in there. Florida Atlantic, I do think, was a team that deserved to be in the tournament. Maybe not as safely in as an 8 seed. And again, there are a whole slew of things like that that I'll probably explain as we go along. But without any of that, you have to take the bracket how it is. There's no point in complaining about this team should have got a higher seed, whatever. Let's predict March Madness. I know, very scary sentence to say. First game needs no introduction here. Where else should we start but the East region with the UConn Huskies just right here below me in the East? UConn's been the best team pretty much all year round. You can make a case why Houston, Purdue looked better than them at points, but throughout the course of the season, UConn has been great. Tristan Newton, Cam Spencer, Alex Caravan, Donovan Clingan, Castle, Diarra Johnson. Where do I stop with this team? This team is full of loaded talent. Even after losing some really key pieces off of this team last year, this is still probably the best team in the country. No wonder why they are the national champion favorites. They are going to have no problem against the Stetson Hatters. First time in the NCAA tournament for Stetson. FAU and Northwestern to me is a very interesting game. I love Boo Buie for Northwestern. I think he is an absolutely phenomenal talent. Could be an All-American type talent there as well, but Northwestern is pretty banged up. They got a couple injuries with a couple of the role players, and while I don't think the Owls are going to have an answer for Boo Buie defensively, this Owls team can score. They're 16th in the nation in scoring. Their shooting accuracy is a really good strength, and they have a lot of guys, pretty much everybody. In fact, I do believe everybody from a team that made a Final Four run last year, and FAU will be moving on. By the way, I forgot to mention, this East region is just absolutely loaded. Absolutely loaded. You have 3 teams that made the Final Four last year, and in my opinion, the best 1, 2, 3, 4 in the entire bracket. You have the best 1, the best 2, the best 3, and the best 4. In my opinion, the East is absolutely loaded. We'll get to what possibly could be the best 5 here as well in the San Diego State Aztecs, another team that made a a run at things last year. Now, for the UAB Blazers, I think this team is going to be really, really fun to watch. I just think that San Diego State's defense going to be a little bit too much for what the Blazers are going to try to throw at San Diego State, and the Aztecs will move on there to the round of 32. Auburn Tigers are going to go up against the Yale Bulldogs. I did say that Auburn was probably the strongest 4 seed. This is the team that probably deserved a 3. They are playing their best basketball right now. Yale survived by the skin of their teeth against the Brown in the Ivy League championship game, but Yale is probably the best 13 seed here on this board. Again, just another reason to go show this East region is stacked. Auburn cannot take Yale lightly, but I think that Bruce Pearl has his Tigers led by Janai Broom playing really, really well. Auburn will move on to the round of 32. We move to the bottom half of the East region where you have BYU and Duquesne. Now, if you know me personally, you would know that I would have been saying before this season that I think this is the best team in Duquesne school history. And even though, again, no one expected them to go win the A10 tournament, no one expected them to be here. They definitely stole a bid. I'm still not impressed with Duquesne. This is a high-flying BYU offense. They're going to score a ton of points, and I don't think Duquesne is going to be able to keep up. So I got BYU moving on to the round of 32. Illinois and Morehead State. I do like Morehead State. I believe they have the OVC player of the year, and they're going to be able to, I think, hang with Illinois for a little bit in this game, but Terrence Shannon, Coleman Hawkins, Marcus Domask playing too well for the Illinois Fighting Illini. I got Illinois moving on to the round of 32. We're going to move to the last game here. I don't think the Iowa State Cyclones are going to have much trouble with the South Dakota State Jackrabbits. Tough defense. This might be the best defense in the entire country here with the Iowa State Cyclones. Give me Iowa State moving on here to the round of 32. And then this one's really, really tough. So we got the Drake Bulldogs going up against the Washington State Cougars. You have the champions of the MVC holding off a really, really tough Indiana State team, and Washington State, who have kind of fumbled coming down the stretch. But if you're going to stop Drake, and if you're going to beat Drake, you have to stop Tucker DeVries. That's where this team starts. He is an exceptional basketball player, but Washington State has length. They have size. They have athleticism, and they're going to be able to defend the Drake Bulldogs. 2 really good defensive rebounding teams. Drake does struggle on the offensive glass. Washington State excels on the offensive glass. If Drake is going to be able to win this game, they have to keep Washington State off the offensive glass, which is going to be a very, very tough ask. That being said, this is my first upset pick of the bracket. I'm in love with this Drake Bulldogs team. I love DeVries, not only the coach, but the player as well. Darian with his son Tucker. I really, really like the Bulldogs. I think, again, while the matchup problem is there with the length and size, I do believe that Drake is going to have what it takes to pull off this upset here in March. I have him moving past the Washington State Cougars, and Drake will be moving on. We are going to slide down the bracket here to the West region, the region that sees North Carolina getting that 4th number 1 seed. No matter who wins that play-in game, North Carolina is going to move on there. RJ Davis, Armando Baycott, a lot of transfers coming in to that team there as well. No 16-1 here. By the way, I do have Howard winning that game against Wagner. This is another very tough 8-9 games. You could complain however much you want that some of these teams could have been seeded higher, seeded lower, probably should have been, maybe lower in both of these teams' cases. They got the 8-9 matchups right. They are very, very tricky to predict this year, including this one. Now, Mississippi State has a lot of guys that are going to be able to really take it to this Michigan State team, and Chris Jansen's done a phenomenal job as the head coach this season. But the Michigan State Spartans, we know what they can do in March, and we know what Tom Izzo can do in March. That being said, this is the team that had very high expectations, was a lot of people's national championship picks. If you're going to want a Cinderella to sort of wake up here, Michigan State might very well be that team. I believe that Michigan State, look, while they've had problems with the 5 this year, they've had a lot of rotational issues. That backcourt is absolutely incredible, and we know what Tom Izzo can do in March. Give me the Michigan State Spartans to move on to the round of 32. Very close game, though. I think Mississippi State can absolutely win that one there as well. This is another really tough one. You got the champion of the WCC and the St. Mary's Gales going up the champions of the WAC and the Grand Canyon Antelopes. This is another very tough one for me because there are a couple of these mid-major teams that I feel like when I watch them, I'm watching a high major team, and Grand Canyon is one of them. Now, St. Mary's, Randy Bennett, when they get into the tournament, we know this team just wins. They are a very, very good side, and we've started to see a lot of these pieces from last year start to develop more and more. You're looking at guys like Mahaney and Marshallonis and Saxon and Dukas. Now, they are losing that forward, I believe his last name is Jefferson. He has an injury, and that's going to affect what this team is able to do defensively. This is an aggressive team. They are a physical team. I think Grand Canyon is going to be able to match that, but I got the Gales surviving. Something is giving me a whole lot of thing to be excited about with this St. Mary's team. Grand Canyon is a tough matchup here, as the Antelopes are another physical defensive team that can score a ton of points in bunches as well. Their offensive rebounding is really, really good, but the Gales, I think, will be able to keep them off the offensive glass. A very good rebounding team, and again, a top 20 defense nationally. So I got the Gales moving on there as well. Got to be honest here, Alabama at the 4 line, probably right around the seed line they should be at. I'm just not in love with this Alabama team I'm just not in love with this Bama team at all. They refuse to play defense. However, they can score points in bunches, and if they're on and they're shooting hot, they're going to be a very hard team to beat in this tournament. Now, with that being said, if they were playing a team like Yale, maybe even Samford on the 13 line, I might be able to pick that upset. I'm just not in love with Charleston either. Now, they do have one of the nation's longest winning streaks coming in. We know they can score points. They're a great ball handling team. They are really good at scoring. Free throw shooting definitely is a little bit of a question mark for them, but you're going to need to score in bunches if you're going to be able to get past Bama. You're also going to need to be able to defend to be able to get past Bama, and I just don't think Charleston's going to be able to do that. While I do see it being a pretty close game, I do think Alabama survives, even though, again, not really in love with this Alabama team of any sort. You move on to the bottom half of the West region. Clemson and New Mexico, and again, another team in the West that I just don't really like in the Clemson Tigers, and New Mexico is playing stupidly well right now. No idea how they didn't get above the 11th seed line. I genuinely have no idea how they're sitting here as the 11th seed. However, they are the betting favorite against the Clemson Tigers, at least according to spreads and things like that. I love this New Mexico team. When Jaden House gets going, I mean, this team can look unstoppable. There are a lot of other phenomenal playmakers on this team here as well. Again, House is their best player, but you got Mashburn and Toppin inside. A lot of other really good players there as well. New Mexico, I have moving on. Pulling off the upset, technically, in terms of seeding, moving on to the round of 32. Baylor over Colgate is where I'm going here with this next one. Toothpaste is back in the tournament. Have not been super impressed with the Patriots, as I have with teams that they have put in the tournament in prior. I just think Baylor's too strong, too physical, too much scoring. Some of those freshmen they have on that team are absolutely incredible, and Baylor's going to move on to the round of 32. Another team out of this region that I just don't really like. Again, you take a look here at this West region, just not a lot of teams I am a big fan of. Not a big fan of the way that Dayton is playing. Now, I see their potential. Yes, they got a lot of good guard play. Definitely can score and definitely can give Nevada fits in this game. But Nevada down the stretch playing really, really well. They also got good guard play. I think it's going to be able to match Dayton. And I also believe that Nevada is going to pull the upset against the Dayton Flyers. Nevada moves on to the round of 32. What a story this is, huh? Long Beach State fired their head coach, or they had mutually agreed to part ways at the end of the season, and they just kept winning. And they just kept winning, upsetting UC Irvine, and eventually winning their conference championship game to get an automatic bid into the NCAA tournament. And you know what? Why not? They should be able to keep winning, although I don't think that's going to happen against this Arizona Wildcats team. I know. If you've trusted Arizona in the tournament before, you have been burned. I'm I'm a believer in this Arizona team this year. A lot of phenomenal players that are here on this team. It starts with Omar Ballo inside. He is a very, very skilled big man himself. They got some absolutely incredible guard play there as well. Uh, 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 of course, their leading scorer, Caleb Love. I don't know why the name was slipping my mind. Of course, their leading scorer, Caleb Love. You got Larson and Boswell up top as well. Johnson is sitting down low with Ballo. This team has size. This team has athleticism. This team has guard play. They have ball handling. They don't turn the ball over. I love this Arizona team this year. I got them moving on to the round of 32. All right, let's go ahead and take a move on up back to the top of the bracket, where we are in the South region. Number one seed in the region, the Houston Cougars. They will have no problem getting past the Longwood Lancers. Second time in 3 years that the Lancers are in the tournament. But again, love this Longwood team. Or no, excuse me, sorry. While I do like this Longwood team, I love this Houston team. Kelvin Sampson has done a very good job at keeping this team together, at being able to keep this team focused. They are one of the best defensive units in the entire country, and while their guards are small, LJ Cryer, Jamal Shedd, Sharp, Dunn, these guys are ballers. Roberts in there as well is another phenomenal piece, as well as Francis. And this is the team that just defends at such a high level. You need to run the floor, you need to score in bunches, but you also need defense to beat Houston. Longwood will not be able to provide much of that, as Houston easily moves on to the round of 32. How about this for a storyline, huh? So Trev Alberts, the former AD at Nebraska, surprisingly went in a move over to Texas A&M to fill the spot for Ross Bjork, who ended up taking the AD job at Ohio State when Gene Smith retires there in July. They were playing each other in the NCAA tournament, not only in the men, but in the women's tournament as well. Nebraska and Texas A&M will face off. I mean, just wow. But when you take a look at this matchup here, Buzz Williams Aggies definitely can be a sleeper team. I do not trust them in this tournament. I love what Nebraska has. They are great at free throw shooting. Their defense is also really, really good. I don't know if they're going to fully be able to shut down what Wade Taylor brings to the table for this Aggie team, but I do think that Keisei Tominaga and a lot of these other pieces on the Nebraska Cornhuskers will step up, and the Cornhuskers, a phenomenal season in Lincoln. They get their first ever NCAA tournament victory. Wisconsin and James Madison is up next. And oh boy, I mean, did you see some of the Wisconsin? Did you see some of the faces in that Wisconsin locker room? They just lost the Big Ten championship to the Illinois Fighting Illini, and then James Madison slides across that screen. There was fear put in the heart of that Wisconsin team, except for Chucky Hepburn. I mean, if you go back and look at that, he was all business. He was probably really mad, really upset they just lost that Big Ten tournament final, and as soon as he sees James Madison across the screen, hey, it's go time. This is going to be an absolutely phenomenal matchup. I can't wait to see the result of this one. But my result that I'm picking right now is the upset. I think a lot of people are going to be tempted to pick James Madison. I do think it's going to be a trendy upset pick, so I'm kind of going with the crowd a little bit on this one. But Wisconsin has been inconsistent, right? They started out the season really, really well, had a great long period of just not really playing that great of basketball. Were able to pull out some wins, but they definitely didn't look like the team that had played in the first half, and then they've really turned it on here as of late towards the end of the regular season into the Big Ten tournament. A lot of good pieces on that team, but James Madison 31-win mid-major. They were able to avoid playing App State in the conference tournament. They are here. This is absolutely a deserving team, and they're going to show it, I believe, by pulling off the upset. I trust James Madison to be able to at least get to the second weekend here. Again, they do have some a tough road to get there, but they can be a second weekend team. Possible foreshadowing, maybe. I guess you guys will have to find out. Duke is going to go ahead and beat Vermont. Kyle Filipowski, Jeremy Roach, a lot of other great players on that Duke team. And until I see Vermont get past a first-round tournament game, I'm not a huge believer in the Catamounts. While I do like this team and I like the style of basketball they play, I believe they've put some better teams in the NCAA tournament in recent history, and they're not going to get past the Duke Blue Devils. I believe that Duke will move on to the round of 32. Texas Tech and NC State is a very interesting game, and I know the very trendy pick is to go with the NC State Wolfpack. 5 wins in 5 days to win the ACC tournament. Where have you heard of such an absurd thing? This is a team that is playing some of the best basketball out of anyone in the entire country. Got a lot of very, very good players. DJ Horn, DJ Burns. I mean, just talk about what DJ Burns does inside. He hit a 3 in the ACC tournament final over North Carolina, if you could even believe that. Just a lot of great players. Very, very good team. I like this Texas Tech team a lot. This is another team that can score in bunches. Isaacs, a former Iowa Hawkeye, and Joe Toussaint. A lot of good guard play with Williams and McMillan. Those are 4 guards that are averaging at least 10 points per game here for this team. Very good in free throw shooting. They shoot the 3 really, really well. Now, are they going to be able to rebound with DJ Burns inside? That's going to be something to watch out for here, but I think guard play will elevate Texas Tech over NC State. That, to me, though, is one of the premier first-round matchups to watch. I think that's going to be fascinating, but I do have the Red Raiders moving on there into the round of 32, as I do with the Kentucky Wildcats. Now, how much do you trust Kentucky in tournament play? Well, I do believe that this is the longest tenured head coach in Division I with the Oakland Grizzlies. No, not Oakland, California. This is Oakland out of Michigan. They won the Horizon League championship, and they get a very tough draw here. Now, Oakland is going to be a team, I think, that gives Kentucky fits, but when Kentucky is on, we know this team is on. Now, the defense, sure, it can definitely be questionable, but this is a Kentucky team that when they turn it on, especially offensively, ooh, there's not a lot of teams that can beat them. This is a Kentucky team that can score 100 points with ease. Again, they can also give up 100 points with ease, though. Kentucky's got some phenomenal guard play. They got some of the stars of this tournament. Reeves, Dillingham, Shepard, 3 guards, 3 names to watch, all on one team. Loving it for the Kentucky Wildcats. They move on there to the round of 32. Florida will play the winner here of Boise State and Colorado. We'll make a quick pick on that first 4 game. Been burned by Boise State too many times in the tournament in recent past. Colorado's starting to play really well. I'll go with the Buffaloes to win that first 4 game. But even with the injury to their big man, I do like the Florida Gators to move on here to the round of 32. Now, I don't believe that they played the absolute utmost toughest competition there in the SEC tournament. At least not the toughest road they could have played, but you had to get through a really tough Georgia team that is going to be playing postseason basketball in the NIT. They manhandled the Alabama Crimson Tide. That's a team that can score in bunches. Again, like I said, doesn't really defend. They got through Texas A&M. What a game that was. And then they just kind of got ran out of the building by Auburn. Now, there was an injury suffered here from the Florida Gators. Their big man down low inside is hurt and is going to be out for the NCAA tournament. So that's a big blow, especially to what Florida can do rebounding. I still think, though, that, again, no matter who wins that play-in game, Florida will go ahead and be moving on. Okay. This game right here did give me some headaches. So Steve Lutz is the coach of Western Kentucky. You want to know what he's done the past 2 seasons? He brought Texas A&M Corpus Christi first to a first 4 in 2022, and then passed the first 4 into the round of 64 in the NCAA tournament with the Islanders. He's now here with Western Kentucky, and this is probably the best team that he has had throughout his very, very short 3-year head coaching career. Western Kentucky is a great defensive team. They're in the nation's top 40. Defensive rebounding, they are great. However, they're not a great ball handling team. They turn the ball over a lot of sloppy possessions, a lot of times for this Western Kentucky team. If they were a little bit better of a ball handling team, I'm telling you right now, I would pick the upset because I don't trust the health of Marquette. Also, Iguodaro, that big man, was banged up. Tyler Kolek didn't play the entirety of the Big East tournament. However, I am not going to knock what Marquette did in the Big East tournament. They were able to get all the way to the championship game before running into a buzzsaw at UConn, and they kept that game close with UConn for a long while. Marquette is a little bit banged up. I think Western Kentucky can be a hard matchup for them, but again, I do think Marquette's playing some really good basketball right now. Do have them moving on to the round of 32 to play the Florida Gators. Moving on to the final region here, the Midwest region. Purdue is going to win the winner of this play-in game. No 16-1 this year for the Purdue Boilermakers. This team this year is just different. By the way, I do have the Montana State Bobcats winning that matchup against Grambling State. First ever trip to the NCAA tournament for them. But for the Purdue Boilermakers, this team was just scared to shoot the three last year. They shot 31% from three last year, still was able to get that one seed. This year, 32%. This year, they're shooting 41% from three. They are the second best team in terms of three-point shooting. A lot of transfers that have come into this program have helped that as well. Well, okay, not a lot of transfers, but a lot of guys stepping up. Of course, you still have Zach Edey. He commands the most attention out of anyone in college basketball. Braden Smith, Foster Loyer, Mason Gillis has sort of taken on that lesser role, not expecting him to shoot as much. Lance Jones has come in and performed stupidly well as a transfer, I believe, from Southern Illinois. Boilermaker fans, correct me if I am wrong in that. That kid is an absolute bucket. Love this Purdue team. Do not discount Purdue. I know they haven't proven it yet. This team is legit. They are for real, and they are different this year compared to last year. Purdue can make a deep run in the NCAA tournament. We'll move on to this 8-9 matchup here. The Utah State Aggies lost pretty much everyone off of this team from last year, and they couldn't quite achieve their goal of a Mountain West title. But you know what? Utah State was still really, really good this year. They were actually Mountain West regular season champs after pretty much an entirely overhauled roster. Yeah, this is where the Cinderella story ends. I do like this TCU team a lot. I think they are a matchup nightmare for Utah State, and TCU moves on to the round of 32. Okay, this is another spot where I do have an upset to be picked. Gonzaga is a very streaky team. There are moments where they play well, and there are moments where they really don't look that great. Again, it took a little bit of time for Gonzaga to find their rhythm, but even when they have found their rhythm, there have been a couple performances here and there where you can look at Gonzaga and say, yeesh, this team just does not look great. Still a lot of really good players that are on this Gonzaga team. However, this Gonzaga team, again, as inconsistent as they are, McNeese State is the other team in this tournament from the mid-major line, besides Grand Canyon on the complete other side of the bracket, also playing a WCC counterpart in St. Mary's, that I can look at and say, wow, this looks like a high major team. Entering at 30-3, they won the Southland Conference. They are coached by Will Wade, former high major coach, and I am in love with what the McNeese State Cowboys have on their team. Now, again, Gonzaga does have a lot of good players, and if they play well, they're going to be able to win this game. But for McNeese State, Wells and Shoemate and Garcia and Richards, so many great players on this team. McNeese can defend, they can run, they can score. They're a phenomenal three-point shooting team, and I believe that McNeese State will pull the upset against the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Moving on here to this one, Kansas and Samford. I know this is going to be another trendy upset pick here. I believe that Kansas is going to win at least one game in the NCAA tournament. Again, who knows the status of McCullough and my apologies. Who knows the status of Dickinson and McCullough, especially Kevin McCullough? Who knows if he is going to end up playing? Seems like Hunter Dickinson is going to be rearing up, ready to go. Samford's got size. They have athleticism. They're going to be able to hang with Kansas. This is going to be a single-digit game, but I do believe that Kansas, with Hunter Dickinson back, more than likely will be able to get by Samford. Now, again, if it comes out that Hunter Dickinson might not play, might end up changing this pick. But for right now, I do have Kansas moving on past Samford. South Carolina and Oregon are in here. This is another really tough, really tough first round game, because secretly I am rooting for both of these teams. I would have liked to see both these teams make a pretty deep run here. South Carolina was picked last in the SEC. What Lamont Paris has done with this group is incredible, but Oregon is playing some really high level basketball right now. Absolutely love this Oregon team. Great ball handling team. They don't turn it over. They are great at defensive rebounding, and South Carolina, while they're also great at ball handling, they're good at offensive rebounding. I think Oregon's going to be able to keep South Carolina off the offensive glass, denying them those second chance points. Oregon pulls off the upset. They'll move on to the round of 32. Akron can be a scary matchup for Creighton. Now, they don't have a guy that I think is going to match up with Kalkbrenner size-wise. However, they do have a guy, 6'7", name, 6'7", 6'8", name is escaping my mind, averages 10-point-some rebounds throughout his collegiate career. So Akron's going to be able to get on the glass. They're going to be able to rebound. I just don't think they have an answer for Kalkbrenner in size. And if Creighton is hot when they're shooting these threes, there's no one in the country that's really going to be able to slow them down. Creighton will move on to the round of 32 past the Akron Zips. The Texas Longhorns are here. They will be playing the winner of UVA and Colorado State. I just don't really like this Texas team. I mean, it comes down to that plain and simple. No matter who wins that play-in game, I do think they're going to move on past Texas. Now, I do think Colorado State will win that play-in game. That play-in game is happening tonight as of recording this video. I don't believe that Virginia is even a tournament team. They have no offense. Their defense at times is even really shaky. They are the Virginia teams at old, but they're not a national championship contender. So I think Colorado State will win that one. And you always have a first four team get at least one win. I think Colorado State will beat Texas, move on there to the round of 32. And no magical run for the Peacocks. Dalton Connect, Zakai Ziegler, and the Tennessee Volunteers will be moving on to the round of 32. Wow, I've taken up a lot of your time already here, but appreciate you guys sticking with. We'll move back up to the top side of the bracket here, and we will predict now the second round for this one here. A rematch, well, okay, not necessarily a rematch, but a matchup of Final Four teams from last year. You have the UConn Huskies and the FAU Owls. UConn is just going to be too good. Florida Atlantic, I don't think it's going to have a magical run last year. If you remember last year, they didn't have to play their one seed because their one seed was Purdue, who lost to Fairleigh Dickinson. So definitely going to be a much harder road. Now, I don't think Dan Hurley is happy about seeing the FAU Owls in this spot, but I think this UConn team is too tough, too talented, and even though they lost some pieces, this team is probably better than the team that Dan Hurley fielded on the court last year. They'll get by FAU there by double digits. San Diego State and Auburn is up next. I'm going to roll with the Tigers here. Absolutely love what the Auburn Tigers do. This is a phenomenal team. They are playing their best basketball again when Janai Broome is on. He's one of the toughest players in the country to stop, and I think Auburn will have an answer for everything San Diego State is able to throw at them defensively. Too little offense for San Diego State to make this one any sort of, or I guess too little offense for San Diego State to be able to win this game. It'll be close, it'll be fun, it'll be competitive, but Auburn moves on to the Sweet 16. You move on there and you got BYU and the Illinois Fighting Illini. Again, I'm riding with what I think is the best 3 seed in the tournament in the Illinois Fighting Illini. Again, Terrence Shannon scored, I don't believe I mentioned this last, he scored almost 100 points in 3 games, if not over that. That's absolutely absurd. He's going to continue on this tear. BYU is going to make it really tough on Illinois, because if you want to pick something out with Illinois that maybe is a little bit shaky, it is that defense. It is that defense. They gave up a ton of points in the Big Ten tournament, and they had to come from behind in all three of their games against Ohio State, Nebraska, and against Wisconsin in the Big Ten tournament final. There were points throughout the games where they're playing from behind. If you play from behind against this BYU team when they're hot, that is trouble, but I think Illinois, Terrence Shannon will take over, will do enough, and they will survive. Drake will be a tough matchup here for the Iowa State Cyclones. I just am in love with this defense. TJ Otzelberger's group, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that last name, is going to be on fire. I think they're going to have themselves a really good tournament here. They get into the Sweet 16. So I have chalk in the Sweet 16 there again. I think this is the most loaded, top-heavy region here. It's the most loaded region, period. But in terms of their 1, 2, 3, and 4, it's the best group in the entire tournament. We'll move back on down here to the West. You know what? I think I'm going to make a split-second decision here. So normally I would have said North Carolina is going to move on past Michigan State because who knows if Michigan State is going to struggle here. But you know what? I'm going to pick Sparty to move on into the Sweet 16. Am I? I'm rethinking that now. You know what? I don't think I am. I think I'm going to ride with the North Carolina Tar Heels in this one, but it is close. It is close. If Michigan State is on and they can give North Carolina this sort of pressure, maybe throw a 2-3 zone look at them like what we have seen North Carolina struggle with this year. But I just think R.J. Davis, Armando Bacot, a lot of these other players will take over, will have bigger games than whatever's going to take place out of the Michigan State backcourt. And again, Sparty's been too inconsistent for me to trust. Thinking about that right now, North Carolina moves on to the Sweet 16. They hold on barely. St. Mary's against Alabama. Again, you heard me say it before. Easy decision for me. I love how physical this Gales team is. I love the way that St. Mary's plays. I'm not a fan of the Alabama Crimson Tide at all. St. Mary's physicality and the way that they play defense, if they're able to shut down Bama, I mean, Bama's not going to stop whatever St. Mary's is throwing on because Bama doesn't play defense, so St. Mary's moves on to the Sweet 16. All right, couple opportunities here for some Mountain West teams to continue their Cinderella runs, my apologies. I do have one of them doing so. I am in love with this New Mexico Lobos team, the energy, the passion, all of the players they have there. Why not? They'll move on past Baylor. Baylor's got a lot of physical, tough guys. New Mexico, I think, is going to match that and then some. Give me the Wolfpack. Well, not the Wolfpack. Sorry, I was staring at the Nevada logo. Give me the Lobos. My apologies, to move on to the Sweet 16. So now, speaking of the Wolfpack, no, unfortunately, I do not have them continuing their Cinderella run, leading to an all-Mountain West Sweet 16. Again, if I get burned by Zona, I'm going to have a lot of people saying, I told you so. But again, this Arizona team, I feel like, is just different. They finally have that superstar guard. They've had a lot of superstar forwards and big man. And again, Omar Ballo is one of those guys. But the addition of Caleb Love this year, I think, makes this team different. I think makes them poised for a big, deep run. And Arizona ends the Wolfpack's hope of a Cinderella run. So now we will move on here back to the top of the bracket where we have Houston versus the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Nebraska just got their first tournament win a couple days prior to this game. Sorry, Cornhuskers, I don't think you're going to have enough offense to get past the defense of the Houston Cougars. Jamal Shed, LJ Cryer, and the guard play will take over, will match what Nebraska is able to bring. Again, this is going to be a defensive battle. Can Nebraska win this game? Yes. I even think Texas A&M can be able to upset Houston, but I love this Houston team, and I feel like getting punched in the mouth against the Iowa State Cyclones will be a good wake-up call for them. They will move on to the Sweet 16. James Madison and Duke. You got the Dukes versus the Duke in the round of 32. Call me crazy, but there's something about this James Madison team that is calling to me. The Dukes will be moving on to play in the Sweet 16. Love what James Madison has on that court. And Duke, again, Filipowski, I think, is a tad bit overrated. Duke has had some inconsistencies this season. I do think, much like James Madison against Wisconsin, it's a bad matchup for Duke. James Madison, my second double-digit seed, moving on to the Sweet 16. We got this one here, Texas Tech and Kentucky, high-flying, high-octane offensive game, but when Kentucky is on offensively, there's no one that can stop that backcourt. They're probably the most unstoppable backcourt in the entire country. Kentucky's got a ton of stars. They will be moving on to play in the Sweet 16. All right, you heard me say it before. I just don't trust Marquette. Now, Florida does have the injury issue as well. I don't think they have as many injuries as Marquette. And I know it's Shaka Smart in tournament time. And hey, why not? Let's see Marquette and Kentucky for the 11th time in the NCAA tournament. Already the most common played game in NCAA tournament history. Sorry, Golden Eagle and Wildcat fans, you will not get edition 11 of that in the NCAA tournament. At least according to me, I do like this Florida Gators team. And I think they're going to be able to match up well with Western Kentucky or Marquette, whoever happens to win that game. Give me Florida, the Gators, chomping their way into the Sweet 16. We move on down here to the bottom. Again, Purdue is legit. It's a team that's not afraid to shoot threes, and they have been able to utilize Zach Edey more and more and more as his career has gone along. Purdue will be able to match up with TCU in every facet, and they'll move on to the Sweet 16. Injuries catch up to Kansas. McNeese State, put them in the Sweet 16. The Cowboys will be moving on again. Will Wade this is a team that is going to make a really, really good run. They are going to make a good run in the NCAA tournament if they can get past Gonzaga. I even think they can match up with Purdue here really, really well. McNeese is going to be a team to watch out for here. They are moving on to the Sweet 16. Oh, man, I am absolutely loving this McNeese State team. Again, very few teams out of the mid-majors that I watch and say, dang, that is a high major level team. McNeese State is one of them. We'll move on here. Final two games to predict in the round of 32. Dana Altman, former Creighton assistant, will be playing the Blue Jays. I got the Blue Jays. Moving on there, Kalkbrenner's going to be able to match up with the Oregon Bigs inside. Two very good rebounding teams, but defensive player of the year in Ryan Kalkbrenner, along with this guard play, will be able to take over. And I don't see Rick Barnes slipping up there in the round of 32 to, again, what I'm predicting to be Colorado State. Give me the Volunteers to move on to the Sweet 16. So we'll move back up here to the top half of the bracket. Guys, this East region is so freaking hard. If UConn is going to lose a game in the NCAA tournament, I think it's going to be in the Final Four, or it's going to be this one right here. There have been a couple times this year where I've looked at Auburn, though, and I've said, they're not playing their best basketball. Now, they're playing their best basketball right now, and if they play their best basketball, they can beat UConn, especially if they can catch UConn on a day where maybe they're not hitting their shots as well as they usually do. I just don't see it. I really, really don't. I love this UConn team. They're much better than a team that won a national championship last year, guys. So I got UConn moving on to the Elite Eight, as I do the Illinois Fighting Illini. Yes, I think Terrence Shannon and Marcus Domask, that guard play, will be able to take over. We've seen the Illini. Coleman Hawkins has sort of been off, but Dane Danger has really stepped up for the Illinois Fighting Illini, and they will be moving on to the Elite Eight, in my opinion. We'll stick here down at the bottom now. North Carolina and St. Mary's. Again, I've been iffy on this North Carolina team, and something is telling me ride with the Gales. That defensive intensity that they are able to bring, we've seen North Carolina struggle with that all season long. Whenever teams are able to throw big physical guys or just a physical playing style at North Carolina, they struggle. And I think that's going to be the case here. St. Mary's will out-physicality North Carolina in a run to the Elite Eight. Okay, does the Cinderella story continue? Does New Mexico possibly give the Mountain West a shot to have yet another team in the Final Four? No, unfortunately not. Again, I love Caleb Love and the Arizona Wildcats. Give me Arizona to move on to the Elite Eight, where they will take on the WCC foe, St. Mary's Gales. We'll move on here to back to the top half of the bracket. Houston against JMU, and this is where the Duke's run ends. In order to match up with Houston, you have to be able to defend at a high level, much like we've seen Iowa State do this season, but also in order to get past Houston, you got to be able to score a ton of points. Now, I think James Madison can score a lot, and I think James Madison can get out and run That's what I meant. Sorry. You don't necessarily have to score a lot to beat Houston, but you do have to defend and you have to be able to get out and run. Get Houston beat in transition. I don't think James Madison's going to be able to do that at a high enough level, which leads me to pick Houston for my Elite Eight, Kentucky and Florida. Again, this Kentucky backcourt is something absolutely special. They will take over in the NCAA tournament. I believe these two teams went 1-1 against each other in the regular season series. But again, this Kentucky team, ooh boy, love, love, love that backcourt. Kentucky will be moving on to the Elite Eight. And your final region here, Purdue and McNeese State. Again, this number 1 seed in Purdue is legit. Don't discount the Boilermakers. I think McNeese matches up well with them. They have athleticism. They have some pretty solid size. Not enough size to contend with Zach Edey. This could be a 3-point shoot-off, though. Both these teams shoot the 3 ball exceptionally well. I just think that the size of Zach Edey and the attention he commands inside will put Purdue over the top against McNeese. Moving on to the Elite Eight. Then you have Greg McDermott versus Rick Barnes in the Sweet 16. I think if we get this matchup, it's going to be an absolutely phenomenal matchup. And give me the Blue Jays to move on, making the Elite Eight for the 2nd straight year. Ryan Kalkbrenner will be able to really do his work inside. And I think Creighton's guard play is going to be able to match whatever Zakai Ziegler and Dalton Connect are able to bring to the table. Creighton in the Elite Eight. So now we'll move on to your Elite Eight matchups. You got the UConn Huskies against the Illinois Fighting Illini. Again, if UConn, I said it earlier, if they were going to lose a game, it's going to be that game right there against Auburn, or it's going to be in the Final Four. Therefore, I have UConn in the Final Four. The best team in the country gets out of the loaded East region and into the Final Four, a chance for them to go win their 2nd straight national championship. We'll move on down to the West region here, where you have St. Mary's and Arizona. Woo. Both of these teams, 2 different styles of basketball. You have the physicality of St. Mary's, and then you have the great guard play, still big, athletic type style that Arizona likes to play at. I think Caleb Love makes a difference in this game. And with St. Mary's being a little bit banged up, especially with Jefferson, again, I believe is that last name, with him being out, that's a huge defensive piece that St. Mary's is losing, and I believe it's going to catch up with them right here. I think they've had good matchups. If they're able to get past Grand Canyon, they have a good matchup with Bama or Charleston, likely playing North Carolina. Again, North Carolina struggles with physicality. That's a good matchup for them there. Arizona, I think, can give the physicality right back, and I think can give it to them in a way that's not going to lead to any sort of good things for St. Mary's. So the Wildcats moving on to the Final Four. Who else is moving on to the Final Four? Well, the 1 seed out of the South region in the Houston Cougars. How much do I trust Kentucky to move forward, especially if this is the team that doesn't play defense? Where Houston's defense especially excels is on that 3-point line. That's something that you also have to be able to take away if you are going to beat Kentucky. You have to take away that 3-point line, which is what Houston can do. And while Kentucky can get out and run, I don't think they're going to be able to play a high enough level of defense to get through Houston, as the Cougars moving on there to the Sweet 16. I was looking at Sweet 16. Moving on to the Final Four. The Final Four, Purdue and Creighton. Can Creighton finally break into the Final Four after the heartbreak against San Diego State last year? They can. But I don't think they do. Something about this Purdue team, again, guys, the last time we saw someone lose to a 16 seed, it was the Virginia Cavaliers. They went on to win the national championship. Foreshadowing? Maybe. You guys will have to find out. First Final Four matchup in Glendale, Arizona, Saturday, April 6th. You got the UConn Huskies against the Arizona Wildcats. Boy, what a matchup this is going to be. However, I do believe that, again, no one is better than UConn right now. And I do not believe that anybody out of this West region, not North Carolina, not St. Mary's, not Arizona, not Baylor, not even a Cinderella team like a Michigan State or a Grand Canyon or a New Mexico, I think are going to be able to match up with UConn. Therefore, I do have the UConn Huskies getting in to the national championship game again. I think the best matchup for them out of that region is Arizona. I think Arizona is possibly the best matchup for UConn in the Final Four here, but I still don't think they're going to be able to do enough to get through the UConn Huskies, as UConn in the national championship game, where they will face another 1 seed, whether it be the Houston Cougars or the Purdue Boilermakers. Again, when you compare UConn, Houston, and Purdue, not with each other, but with the rest of the nation, I think those 3 teams are head and shoulders above the rest, better than anybody in the entire country. And that game is going to be an absolute thriller. Now, Purdue, they have the size to match up with Houston, especially with Zach Edey inside. But with the way that Houston plays defense, especially on that perimeter, I think they're going to be able to take away what Purdue's able to do from that 3-point line. While they might not be able to contain Zach Edey a ton, I do think they are going to be able to rebound good enough to be able to get past the Purdue Boilermakers, and Houston moves on to the national championship game, where we see Houston and UConn meet up for the national championship. I got to be honest, if this is the matchup that we're going to get, I am going to be rooting for Houston. I love Kelvin Sampson. I love this Houston Cougars program. I love the energy that he coaches with. However, there is just nobody in my mind that can beat UConn right now. This team did everything that they didn't do last year. They won the Big East regular season. They won the Big East tournament. And now they're going to finish it off. Back-to-back national champions for the first time since Florida did it in 06 and 07. So there you go. That is my pick. The UConn Huskies will cut down the nets and see the blue and red and white confetti fall in Glendale, and UConn will be your 2024 national champions, according at least to me. Please let me know your guys' thoughts in the comment section down below. Hey, as always, remember to play hard, but tailgate harder. College football content is coming back very soon, as well as UFL content starting to come next week. Again, tell me how excited you guys are for that. I've taken up a lot of your time already. Thank you for taking this time with me to look at the bracket, to predict it. Good luck in your March Madness bracket pools, and have fun watching the madness. I'll talk to you guys very shortly. Goodbye.